Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Past to Future. My name is Curtis. As always, most of the time, I'll be your host. Uh, we have an exciting panel today. We've got Chelsea over there. We got Nicole, newcomer, as one of our debaters. We got George as one of our judges. We got another newcomer. We got Rudy as one of our judges. Jessica is also one of our judges, and Jack is back as one of our debaters. He's always going to be with us for a short time, but we're going to enjoy as much time as he has with us. So, the focus of today's episode is the 1985 high school classic, The Breakfast Club, directed by John Hughes, starring such people as Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Emilio Estevez, Anthony Michael Hall, Ali Sheedy, and Paul Gleason. Of course, the story of the Breakfast Club is a story about five teenagers who have to spend a Saturday morning detention at their high school. They've all have done um, different things for them to end up in detention. They come from different worlds, different backgrounds. They get different personalities, can be any more different from each other. And then the more time they spend together in detention, the more they learn about each other and about themselves, and they reveal secrets and truths to each other that they never revealed to each other before, and a friendship is formed. So, as always, we're going to start this episode by sharing our quick thoughts on the movie itself. I will go first. Um, I have a very interesting relationship with this movie. The first time I saw this movie, I think I saw it on TV when I was uh, 13. I don't know, 13, 14, I don't know. And the first time I watched it, I, I was very drawn to it. I was very drawn to the characters. I was very drawn into the atmosphere of the film. I was very drawn to the comedy of the film. I was then I watched it again sometime when I was like 18 or something, and then for some strange reason, I didn't like it second time I watched it. I don't know why. Um, I think it was because something about the characters, something about them after going to high school, something about them felt kind of they felt kind of really really annoying about them, really obnoxious about them. Uh, so they all kind of came off as kind of whiny to me when the second time I watched it, so I didn't enjoy it as much. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like it, it felt real to me. And then the next time I watched it was probably last night, because I even though I didn't have a high opinion of this movie, I still wanted to do this as an episode because it's such a classic, such a it's such a highly regarded film. So why not do it? So last time I watched it, I was going through very mixed emotions because I think I like the the last of the second act and the third act more than the first act of the film. First act of the film, I felt like the characters were a little bit too obnoxious for me, um, a little bit too too fake. Um, especially John Bender. He really annoyed me. But then as the third act progresses and the more they reveal about each other, and it felt more raw to me. What I like about this movie is that it doesn't hold any punches. Yes, it's set in a very Hollywood style of what high school is. It is a high school movie, but at the same time, it does bring that raw emotion to it. It does feel real. It doesn't really pull any punches. So that's what I really appreciate about it. So I don't really love the movie, but I just respect it for what it did and for or what it does. And of course, John Hughes is the late John Hughes is a mastermind in telling these stories and just um, giving the voice of, and just portraying the voice of youth in his films. And the characters have a great chemistry among each other. So, um, and it's a simple story, and sometimes small things come in big packages, and sometimes you could portray these simple stories and make them even make them more impactful, make them even a more grand thing than they intended to be. So I respect the Breakfast Club more than I love it, but I still appreciate it for what it is. So um, Jack, since we don't have you for long, can you just explain what's your thoughts on the Breakfast Club, even though I kind of rambled a bit. Jack there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do love The Breakfast Club and respect The Breakfast Club. The work of John Hughes, time has been very kind to his movies, and it will continue to be. He brought movies and stories about American youth and troubled American youth in a way that I think we all kind of saw ourselves when we were young, and it stays relevant and it stays accurate. I think why it's so universal is that all of us, even if we didn't fit into any of the 5 archetypes that the characters are, we all knew one of those 5 characters, right? And it's been very, it's true to life, like all the best art is, and I enjoy it very much. It's very well written, very well acted. All the actors do very well in it, and I think probably all those actors, they'll be best remembered for their performances in that movie, and that definitely says something as well. I like it very much, and I think most people do. Yeah.
Chelsea, what is your quick thoughts on the Breakfast Club?
Sure. I was actually opposite of you, Curtis. The first time I saw it, I didn't like it. And I don't remember how old I was, but I was older. I was a very sheltered teenager, so I didn't see it till I was probably in my 20s. And I was like, oh, this is kind of annoying. And, you know, I was one of those people who was like, I want sci-fi and fantasy and action, and this is just talking. And then I saw it again later, and I was like, wow, this is actually really good, like the dialogue. And I watched it again, like you, yesterday, and it was still just, I really enjoyed it. I agree with you too, Curtis, that the first act is like a little bit over the top. It's kind of like, what? Like, okay, hold it, tone it down a little. But I think everybody in it did a great job, and I can really relate to the characters of Anthony Michael Hall and Ali Sheedy. Like, both of those combined, that was me in high school. And I didn't carry like tampons around in my bag, but yeah, those type of characters, just their personalities, like I really relate to them, and I really like this movie, and I enjoy the dialogue. Now that I'm older, I can sit and watch it and just appreciate that, and I agree with Jack. It's a classic, and it's really held up over the years, so I love this movie.
All right, George, how about you? Share your thoughts on the Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I mean, I love The Breakfast Club. John Hughes is one of my favorite writers. You know, I'm trying to become a writer, and he's one of my, like, you know, influences. Breakfast Club is definitely like top 5 for me. And it's interesting that you said that you like the second half better, Curtis, because I feel like I love the whole movie, but I feel like some people kind of have trouble with the ending where they kind of like, not like sell out, but the whole thing with like Claire and Bender becoming a couple, it's a little maybe problematic, as they say. The same thing with kind of like Emilio and Ali Sheedy and her kind of being like pretty now, so now he likes her. I still like their kind of change, but I feel like the ending maybe is a little, one of the few things that maybe didn't age well. But overall, I think the movie is just really good. And yeah, the dialogue's great, and the characters are great. And I think it's, yeah, one of John Hughes' best works and one of my favorites.
Yeah, I also kind of think that the whole Molly Ringwald and John Nelson, their characters, I think that relationship could be problematic as well. It's like they've been insulting each other the whole movie. So
yeah,
it's
maybe a relationship that won't last very long, but maybe, you know,
yeah,
date for a little bit. Yeah,
that's high school relationships for you.
Exactly.
Jessica, can you share your quick thoughts?
This is one of those movies I came a little late to the game with watching it. I watched it, I think, my senior year of college, and I'd always heard about it. You always see like people referencing it in their other works, which I feel like is just a sign of how much of a classic it is, but also just like how much of a phenomenon it was, that it's inspiring other works. And you see like their little bits, like put one foot in front of the other and all that good stuff. But it's one that I certainly enjoyed. It's very much a teen kind of movie. It was a lot more serious than I was expecting. I had no idea what I was getting into going into it, but it's still one that I hold very near and dear to my heart.
Awesome. Nicole, can you share your quick thoughts on The Breakfast Club?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a very special movie because I grew up with John Hughes. I love all that he does. I think that, the genre that he created, it started with him, and then he made sure, I feel like, it died with him. It's morphed over the years for sure, but, he truly created something special in my opinion. I had the posters on my wall. I can rewatch it all the time. And while some things could be very cheesy, it is the 80s, and films were very different back then, very quick, cheesy, somewhat dumb dialogue. So yeah, maybe the bad boy and the popular girl ends up together in the film, but, I don't think that we're meant to think past that, like their future instances that they may get involved with, between the different groups in school. But no matter what, I love the movie. I love John Hughes. And this was the first one that he actually wrote and was ready to shoot. But the studio instead wanted a more teen comedy to be the first one, which is why 16 Candles was released first. And then they were like, cool, you know what you're doing. Go ahead with your more dramatic teen comedy. So I love it.
And Rudy, can you share quick thoughts on The Breakfast Club?
Yeah, it seems like it's a movie. Like, I imagine it's tough for anyone not to enjoy some aspects of it to relate to it. I watched the movie for the first time in my late teens, early 20s, in the late hours at night when everybody else was sleeping in the house, and it kind of blew my mind. Like, I felt like I was on a high while I was watching it, just like naturally. And it's kind of surreal. It's epic. Yeah, I love seeing Bender and Brian clash. It's the tough guy versus the whole talk about making the elephant in the woodshop class. I was thinking about how it's kind of flawed, how George mentioned how at the end of the movie it seems like it's kind of cute where the people wind up together even though maybe they shouldn't. And I almost like interesting thoughts last night. I think it's maybe the better version of Grease slightly. At the end they say that what is it? Sandy kind of how she stops being like a cheerleader and she turns into like the kind of rebel. And in this movie, it's like as much as like Ali Sheedy's character is dressed up to look differently, she's like, that black shit or black crap. She's like, I like that stuff around my eyes. And she even goes and steals the patch off of Andrew's varsity jacket, so you can see that she's like still the kleptomaniac she once was. And I think I've learned to love it more over time, and that's the most we can want from any movie. End of thoughts.
All right. But as with all of our Cast of the Future episodes, we're going to pretend like this movie never came out in 1985. It was never released. No one has ever heard of Breakfast Club until today in 2020. We are pretending we are living in that world, and we're going to act as a bunch of casting directors casting this 2020 version of the Breakfast Club. So, and we're going to be casting characters such as Carl the janitor, assistant principal Richard Vernon, Allison and Brian, Andrew, Claire, and John. And we'll also be choosing a new director as well. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and cast to the future. Now, first round, we are going to be casting the janitor Carl, played by John Kapalos. He, of course, obviously he's the janitor of Shermer High School. He has, it's kind of hinted that he and Brian kind of share a friendship too, and also he and an assistant principal Vernon, they share some together as well. He's pretty much like one of the comic reliefs of the film. He's a wise guy. He's a wisecracker. If someone tries to insult him, he knows how to insult them back. As we see the scene with John Bender, where John tells him, "Hey, Brian wants to know how to become a janitor," and then he takes that as, I know what you're doing. You're insulting me, and I'll get right back at you. So we're going to cast the character of Carl. So, Chelsea, who is your choice for janitor Carl?
Well, my choice, I was having a really hard time. My first thought was Jackie Earle Haley, and I ended up actually going with a woman, and I guess it would be Carla, and I went with Kate McKinnon, who is known for Saturday Night Live and just female-driven movies usually. She was in Ghostbusters and The Spy Who Dumped Me with Mila Kunis. And I just really think that her laid back, sarcastic personality fit really well with this role. She has the comedic chops to be the, little bit of comic relief. And she is subtle enough looking, like she's not homely, but she's not like amazingly gorgeous. So I think that she could portray a janitor. If you've seen any of her SNL skits, she can do a broad range of all sorts of things. And I can really see her acting alongside the actor I chose for the principal as well, the vice principal, because I think that they would play together well in their comedic timing as well as their respective characters' kind of jerkiness, because he does come across the janitor does come across as a jerk a couple of times, and but like a jerk in his own way, like what you said, Curtis, about how he has a quip for whatever, like when he's like, oh, he comes across the principal, the vice principal, like going through personal files, and he's like, give me $50 and I'll keep quiet. So that kind of stuff I can really see Kate pulling off, because she's always had that kind of like, it's like almost an annoying comedy, and like she can be annoying, but she can also be very, she's still funny. Like you still want to see her, even though she comes across as this kind of like sarcastic, annoying chick. So that's why I chose Kate.
Okay, let's see. Jack, do you share who you got for janitor Carl?
Yeah, for Carl the janitor, I chose Seth MacFarlane. For a lot of the reasons Chelsea mentioned. Seth MacFarlane, I think, has great observational humor, which is what I think the character of Carl has. He, observes what these kids are doing and what the assholes who run the school are doing, and he can turn it into a sharp one-liner. The other thing that Seth MacFarlane has that I like is that he's likable enough that maybe the young people would be able to open up a little bit to him or share with him what they wouldn't to their asshole parents or the asshole principal. So he has that kind of observational humor and one-liner kind of humor, and he's also approachable and has some level of warmth that I think the character of Carl has. Also, the character of Carl, I think, was originally much bigger than he was in the final film, and I think a bigger comedic name like a Seth MacFarlane would warrant maybe expanding on the character of Carl.
And Nicole, who was your choice for Carl?
Yeah, so I chose Chris Messina. He was on Birds of Prey. He was in the Mindy Project. And just so I can address this whole round right now, I just talk about my personal choice, right? And then we go and we rebut. So this is just me telling you about my person.
Yeah, just talk about your personal choice.
Okay, sorry about that. I just want to make sure that I don't mess up. All right, so I know that there's a lot of people that is saying, this film is a comedy, it's a comedy, it's a comedy, but I feel like it's a drama with some lighthearted comedy points in it. So I chose Chris Messina because he just has that look of the original John. And John at the time, he was only 29 years old, but I just feel like if I were to put someone younger in that category, with this generation, I don't think sends a good message. Someone in their 20s becoming a janitor and, just future aspirations. So I chose someone, a little bit older. And you have to be quick-witted in this role, but not necessarily a comedian. In addition to that, the original gentleman who played Carl was, he was completely method. All right. So he isolated himself during the entire time of filming. That way he could get that isolation on screen. Chris Messina also does method acting. He gained 40 pounds for Live by Night. He is always asking, what is my character? What am I supposed to do? Okay, I'm going to live like that for a bit, and then follows through. So I feel like him and my choice for Vernon would interact really well together, but mostly the choices being he can be that dark, mysterious because he's the one who sits back in the shadows. He's not always going to come up to the people and crack a joke. No, he's watching you from afar. He knows what's going on in everyone's lives. He's there to remind them they're not perfect and that he sees the real person that are the real people that they actually are.
All right, Nicole, Jack, and Chelsea, debate it out.
Okay, I guess I'll start. So the reason why, first of all, I friggin' love Kate McKinnon. I think she is a rock star. Secondly, Seth MacFarlane is just a comedic genius. The only reason I didn't go full comedy with this choice is because, like I just mentioned, this character has some sarcastic points, but he's not the lightheartedness of the film. He is there to, in my opinion, he's there to be a little creepy because he's reminding, I'm always watching you. And then sometimes, cracks up with a little bit of sarcastic whims and then talks crap about all of the people behind their backs when he's talking to Vernon.
Right. And I that's what I can see Seth MacFarlane doing. I can see him being a funny one-liner kind of person, but at the same time being this kind of behind-the-scenes observationist raconteur about these kids and about the mean adults. So that's why I think he's kind of a good crossover kind of guy. I also think that at least my vision for this was a really hard one for me to cast because I feel like the 5 principals should be more lesser knowns, even though I picked pretty good names for all of mine. But if I were to cast this today, I think I would, and any casting director would, seek lesser known kids. And I think having one kind of headliner and almost a glorified cameo, like a Kate McKinnon or a Seth MacFarlane, would be really appropriate.
For me personally, I think that Seth MacFarlane, I love Seth MacFarlane, but I think he's a little bit too big for the role personally. I think that he would kind of outshine the kids. And, this is supposed to be kind of a smaller role, not, as you said, not super well known, as you said, Jack. And Kate is well known, but not I don't know, not huge. And she's mostly played like the sidekick, which is another reason why I think that she could go for this. She would just be like, she wouldn't stand out so much that it would be distracting. And I think she could be serious enough and with her sarcasm hold down the role as just that standalone side character of Carl. I don't know Chris Messina's background well enough. I know the name and I recognize his face, but I don't know enough stuff that he's been in. But if he's a method actor, he would probably do well in the role. So I guess it's just, for me, it would be a matter of not only who Vice Principal Vernon is, but also how, whether or not it seems like a girl could control that role, the role of the janitor. And for me personally, I think that Kate could do it. So that's, yeah.
And then, so piggybacking off of that, I think Kate is so awesome that she steals every production that she's in. She's my favorite person to watch. I'm easily like, yes, every time she speaks. Seth MacFarlane, same thing. I think that they're both too big because she is such an amazing comedic actor. Not to mention that both Kate and Seth, I think, are too goofy. I think they're too much of a not necessarily a cartoon character, but I mean Seth MacFarlane, he did try to play the bad guy in Logan Lucky, but it was almost like too much of a character, and I just think it would be too much and too over the top, and that's why I went with doling it back, because that's the thing, Carl, the guy who played him, John Cabellos, he didn't do a ton before Breakfast Club. So saying Chris Messina and then saying Kate McKinnon and Seth MacFarlane, I personally would, I would choose my pick because I picked him, but because it's a little bit of a lesser known person. And for me.
Yeah. Well, all of this is just my opinion. I think my hesitation with Kate is that Kate is such a smart cookie. I don't know if I could see her playing goofy or silly. I mean, she's such a smart comedian and such a smart character actress that I don't know if she could bring the, not dumbness, but the humbleness, I guess, is the word that's coming to mind, that I think the character of Carl could use and that I think Seth MacFarlane could bring.
Okay, so there's a great debate all around. I like these choices. These are very interesting choices, and you all brought very great arguments to the tables for each one of your candidates. Kate McKinnon, I love that. Love that Chelsea brought that she has a broad range of comedy. She can easily play a jerk. If you need someone who has to be sarcastic and jokey, Kate McKinnon is a good person. And Seth MacFarlane, as what Jack said, he's great at observational comedy. As you stated, the character himself is an observationalist, and he observes the high school kids throughout the day. He knows their secrets, he knows their conversations, and he can comment on them. And Seth MacFarlane's himself is great at doing that. And with Chris Messina, I love how Nicole said he has the look of the original character almost. Can be quick-witted. Does a lot of method acting like the actor who played Carl in the original. He cares for the characters he plays. He plays. He can be a little mysterious. He can also be a little bit observational. And it's a tough choice between these three. But no, I think I'm going to. I think I'm going to choose Seth MacFarlane. I'm going to go with Jack's choice, Seth MacFarlane, because I like his argument. I think Jack's right about Seth's experience of observational comedy, and Seth MacFarlane, even though he's known for doing a lot of comedy, he has kind of dipped his toe a little bit into the dramatic side, and he probably, I mean, the character's not too dramatic in the scene with Principal Vernon, but it's a quieter scene. It's more atmospheric scene. Doesn't have a lot of one-liner jokes in it, but it's a real scene. It's more real than it is drama. It's real. It's authentic, and I think Seth MacFarlane can pull off being authentic, even especially in a scene like that. Because again, he has dipped his toe in it from here to there. So I'm going to go with Jack's choice for Seth MacFarlane. George, what do you think?
Yeah, these are all really interesting choices. Thinking about it, I do think that Seth MacFarlane and Kate McKinnon would be kind of distracting. I feel like the movie should be about the teenagers, and I think John Capellos did a great job in Breakfast Club of stealing the scene when he was in it, but obviously he's a small part of the movie. He's kind of there to kind of bounce off of Vernon and bounce off of the teenagers. But I feel like if Seth MacFarlane and Kate McKinnon popped up, you wouldn't be like, oh, there's Carl the janitor. You'd be like, oh, there's Seth MacFarlane or there's Kate McKinnon. I think it would be a little too distracting. I'm not super familiar with Chris Messina's work, but looking at what he's done and kind of what Nicole was saying, that he can kind of do the comedy and the drama, kind of like John Capulets did. And Chris Messina is not like, you know, an unknown, but he's someone that could not distract you when he's on screen and can do the comedy and the drama. So I think I'm going to go with Chris Messina.
All right, one for Seth, one for Chris Messina. Jessica, what do you think?
First off, I feel like Jack is playing dirty because I'm in love with Seth MacFarlane. So this made it really hard for me. But just kind of basing it off the arguments, I do kind of agree with the statement that I think Kate McKinnon and Seth MacFarlane would be a little distracting. Like, and my love for Seth MacFarlane aside, if I were to go and see this movie and either of them were in it, I would sit there and be like, okay, I'm done with these kids. Can I see Kate or Seth again? Because they steal every scene that they're in. And I have seen Logan Lucky, and I had to agree with Nicole's point where, yes, he was the villain in it, but it was almost like a cartoon character of a villain. And usually, like, when you see him in film or television, he's the guy that you root for. So that was him stepping outside of his box, and it did appear a little too goofy to me. When Nicole brought up Birds of Prey as an example, I think that's a great example of how Chris Messina could play this role, because Zaz is very dark, very creepy, very sinister, but he has these brief moments of sarcastic humor, or he does these weird things that kind of make you giggle, but that's not the basis of the character. So as much as it pains me to go against my future husband, I am also going to go with Nicole's choice of Chris Messina.
And Rudy, who's your choice? What's your decision?
So, short answer, I'm gonna go with Seth MacFarlane with Jack's choice. At first I appreciated what Nicole said about how Seth MacFarlane and Kate McKinnon could be distracting on screen, but I really enjoy Jack's approach to who he understands the character to be. And because I don't think that the janitor is necessarily a creep, or that he's like too serious all the time. I think he's pretty confident in who he is, and I think Seth MacFarlane's a great choice. And also, I don't think we should be able to say like, oh, he's going to outshine the other actors, because we don't even know who the other actors are at this point. They could end up being like we could end up choosing like big stars of that generation too.
All right, so we got a tie between Chris Messina and Seth MacFarlane. So do this with Chelsea being our tiebreaker. So Chelsea, between Chris Messina and Seth MacFarlane, who are you going to choose?
I'm going to go with Chris. I'm going to go with Nicole's pick, because I really, really think that no matter who else is cast in this, Seth's just too big. Like, he's even bigger than Kate. And I mean, even if you don't know his face, you know his voice, because Family Guy, American Dad, you know, all of that. And it's just, I just really feel that he's too big for that role. I mean, he's got like, what, 3 scenes? And I love Seth, but I would have more seen him as the principal than the janitor. Like, it just, he doesn't strike me as that character. He would outshine whoever we cast even as the principal, I think. So I'm going with Chris.
All right, so we got our first casting down, Chris Messina as Carl. So we got more rounds to go. That was a great round, but let's head on to the second round. We'll be casting Assistant Vice Principal Vernon, of course, played brilliantly by Paul Gleason in the original film. Of course, Vernon is a no-nonsense, tough guy, vice principal who has no bars, he has no limits onto how he can discipline his students. He's not afraid to get up into people's faces, especially John Bender and Vernon have tension throughout the film. So you're gonna need someone who can command a room and who could order discipline. So Jack, who is your choice for Vice Principal Vernon?
I went with Neil McDonough. He's a guy who can play a great villain. If you look at his body of work, he can be very mean, very cold. And yet the other thing that I think he can do, based on his previous work, is he can play kind of insecure, which I think the character of Vernon is supposed to be, yes, evil and mean and scary, but he's also supposed to be this insecure kind of wimp who does end up with the toilet paper stuck to his back and things like that. And I think he could play both the meanness and the insecurity that I see in the character of Vernon.
All right, cool. Nicole, who's your choice for Vernon?
So I went with Hugh Laurie. He is the lead in House, which is pretty much the only thing I think of Hugh Laurie in. So the reason why I chose him is because the original Vernon, he was pretty much just a TV actor. He did one film, Trading Places, prior to with Dan Aykroyd. So I wanted to pick someone that maybe we just haven't really thought of in a bit, because I feel like that's just the actual experience where the previous actor was at the time. But at the same time, I just read that. But yeah, so at the same time, I don't know, I just think Hugh Laurie, first of all, he pretty much was a villain throughout House, even though we loved to hate him as much as we did. I feel like that's what we try to do with Vernon, even though we just despise him. Half of the things that House said throughout the series is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, I'm getting distracted by your all's comments, but thank you. But yeah, Die Hard was after Breakfast Club. Yeah, Hugh Laurie, I think he could just be, because, you know, the principal, he tries to put the fear of God into people's eyes, in my opinion. And so I know Hugh Laurie can successfully do that. But I'm not going to lie, these other choices are pretty spectacular. And so this is probably going to be the most difficult round for me, because I feel like I'm stumbling on my words already. So keep it moving.
All right. Chelsea, who's your choice for Vernon?
My choice for Vernon was Todd Stashwick. I actually have known Todd for a really long time. I met him way before he was, well, not way before. He was just starting in Heroes, I think, when I met him. But he has been the main antagonist in 12 Monkeys, Heroes. He's had guest starring roles on many TV shows like Gotham, Supernatural, American Horror Story. So as Nicole said, you know, he's a television actor for the most part. He's one of those where you recognize his face, but you may not know his name. And, you know, if you see him, you're like, oh my God, he was in this and this and this. And, you know, and he is very good at playing the, well, like you said, the tough guy who doesn't take any crap from anybody. He has a very broad range of acting abilities. He's been in so much stuff, but what I really like about him is his face can portray this false nicety while still being threatening. And he can also, like, well, I mean, as soon as I came across his name in just my search, I was thinking of who could play Dick Vernon. I immediately pictured Todd in this role. I was like, oh my God, wait, Todd would be perfect. And he has the strength and acting ability to pull off this role, as well as his ability to come across as, well, kind of a dick. So, as Dick. Yeah, I think that he would be really good in this. And kind of like what Jack was saying for Neil McDonough, he can still, even though he can have this fierce, false nicety, you know, he can still be just, I guess, laid back enough and not as take himself too seriously that the scene where he does have the, the toilet seat cover stuck in his pants, like, it would totally be something I can see Todd pulling off. Like, he's got that ability to go back and forth with, like, being this kind of innocent, like, naive, you know, like when he's bored in the office and like he spills his soup and he's building things, like, he can totally do that and then, you know, turn around and just be this totally intimidating, almost creepy threatening visage to those students, just like, don't mess with me. And so yeah, I really think he would be perfect for this.
All right, Chelsea, Nicole, Jack, debate it out.
I'll go first. I think both of your choices are very good. I feel like what McDonough has that the other two don't. Vernon isn't supposed to be a love to hate kind of character or a nice kind of guy. He is the villain. He is a villain. And the other thing that he has is he's not only mean, but he's ignorant. Like the stupid thing where he puts the row of books to try and keep the door open and things like that. I don't think Hugh Laurie, he's such a smart actor and his characters are always so smart that I can't really see him doing dumb things like that.
Except for in 101 Dalmatians when he was the silly villain. So I do think that he has the range to, do goofy things like the toilet paper scene. Like he acts like he has it all together, but really he's falling apart. Uh-huh. Now, I say love to hate because, these kids at the end of the day, they're just a bunch of jackasses, but Vernon is a dick and he is the villain, 100%. He's a villain. Oh my gosh, Curtis, I'm so sorry.
Just to throw in there, I agree. And actually, Jack, I would throw what you said about Hugh Laurie. I think that about Neil McDonough. I love Neil McDonough. But both Hugh and Neil, I think, are too smart and serious. Like, not that Todd's not smart and serious, but he has, I don't know, just in all the roles I've seen him in, he can have that naivete about him. Whereas like Hugh and Neil, I really feel like they are pure villain. Like Neil, especially with those piercing eyes, like I cannot see him as a guy who's just like not out to actually kill all the students, like,
but
like
I will say
I can't
that
see him with the toilet paper, the toilet seat cover. I can't see Neil with the toilet seat cover in his pants. Like, I really don't, I don't know. I see him as more of a really serious, scary actor. And Hugh, I saw him in the Night Manager on Amazon with Tom Hiddleston, and he was great in that, but he was terrifying, and so again with him, I also just can't see him as a kind of more naive, laid back, like I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna tough it out so that I look like I'm a bad A in front of the students, I just see that both of them are like, I don't know, just a little bit too serious and too villainy. And while you want him to be the villain, like Jack said, you want him to be, you're not supposed to like Vernon. But I feel like Todd can pull that off too. Like he played a very nasty guy in the last season of American Horror Story, and he was only in it for one episode, but he was just, and he only had like a small scene, but I was just like, oh God, why? Like really did not like his character. And at first you were like, oh, he's not so bad. And then it was like, ugh. So yeah, but anyway, so that's my argument.
Yeah, but I know you mentioned like Neil's piercing eyes. When I was going through all these photos for your all's choices, Todd's picture on IMDb scared the bejesus out of me. Like that is a villain. Like that is like, I would be terrified of this man. But for me, I feel like Vernon is like, he wants to assume that he's the villain, but behind his back, they're all making fun of him. But I feel like if Todd or Neil walked in the door, I'd be like, just like, I didn't say anything. Like Brian the whole time, like I'm good, like like I'm chill.
Well, and that's the thing, like Todd, he has that look, and that's why I love it. I love him as the choice because he has that look. He has that terrifying villain look. But if you've ever seen him in anything, he can totally come across as this just like naive, like aloof, but like still stern villain he's a tough guy, but he's not he's not evil, you know, he's just like somebody that you're like, oh, this guy is he's a D. So
yeah, I mean, all three of them, I think, at least I do struggle with seeing Hugh Laurie as pretty evil. He can be a fun bad guy like he is in 101 Dalmatians, or a goofy bad guy, but I do think Vernon is pretty wicked, and I think Neil's icy blue eyes staring into the students, you know, I've got you for 4 more weeks or 2 more. I mean, that's, I think, is very appropriate for the character of Vernon. And also, if you've seen enough of Neil's work, he can play kind of clumsy and kind of stupid at the same time, but he can be very, very scarily evil.
Okay. Okay. So, good debate all around. These are really, really good choices here. Okay, this was a little bit tough. I love what Jack brought to the table for Neil McDonough. He could bring meanness, and he could be both insecure. And I think that was a similar team for all these choices that brought both of that they could play both silly and naive, but also, you know, threatening and intimidating when they need to. So, and you know, I did look up Todd Stashwood's picture. Boy, that guy does look scary. But you know what? I think, and then, you know, Chelsea brought up that Todd has a, you know, broad range of acting abilities as well. And I love that you brought that his face can portray false kindness. And go back from naive to being strict and all that. But I've got to go with Nicole's choice of Hugh Laurie, because I like that she brought up that Hugh Laurie is the type of person who could play characters that audiences love and hate at, you know, the same time. And that's kind of the thing with Vernon. Like, you love how sometimes he could be duped, and sometimes he could be a bit naive, and sometimes he could be a little bit in over himself. But you hate the stuff that he says to these kids, and how threatening he is, how kind of abusive to his power, to his authority that he has. So I think Hugh Laurie can portray all of that. So I'm going to go with Hugh Laurie. George, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Like, I feel like, unlike Carl, maybe Vernon should be a more recognizable actor. So Chelsea, Todd, I looked him up. You're right. He's done a lot of stuff, but I don't know if I've seen him in anything. So it's kind of hard to decide whether he would be good as this. So I was kind of thinking about Hugh Laurie and Neil McDonough. Like, Hugh Laurie, I actually mostly know for his comedic stuff. So I kind of see him as maybe playing this a little too comedic. I don't know if he could be intimidating as Vernon. I know that Neil McDonough can be very intimidating. And if you guys haven't seen Angels in the Outfield in a while, he can also be very funny because he plays like a goofball in that. But yeah, what I know of Neil McDonough, I feel like he could be intimidating and scary, but also kind of insecure, kind of like Jack was saying. So I think I'm going to go with Neil McDonough.
All right. Jessica, what do you think?
This one was a hard one because there was good arguments all around. For me, with Neil McDonough, as much as I love him, he's just one, and I don't know if it's just because of his look or whatever, he always reminds me of one that would be like in law enforcement, where like word is law and you have to listen to everything he says, and he's very confident about it. I personally have not seen him in many projects where he's unsure of himself or a little bit more insecure. So I feel like he might be too hard of a choice for the principal, because I don't see him letting up on that strictness. And for me, it was between Todd and Hugh. The issue that I have with Todd, and like, granted, I've seen a lot of the stuff that he has done. Like, I like horror movies and I like, you know, scary thrillers. So seeing his picture, what he looks like, but then also hearing the examples of, like, he was on American Horror Story, he was in 12 Monkeys, he's the antagonist in that. Those are very dark subject matters that I feel like he might be too much of a hard villain for it. And what really kind of sold me was Nicole bringing up 101 Dalmatians, because as silly as it sounds, like Hugh Laurie was a villain in that, and he was scary while at the same time being kind of like a bumbling oaf with his partner.
Arthur Weasley.
Huh?
Arthur Weasley.
Yeah. And yeah, and I also, just with him, I've never watched House, but I've seen like clips of it. He's one that, like, when he speaks, you want to listen. So I could kind of believe him being in an education system, telling kids what to do, assuming they're going to listen to him, but he has that. And I don't know if it's just like that British charm where it's like, oh, but like if he bumbles or he does this or he does that, it's kind of like, oh, like you kind of expect that. It's kind of like Hugh Grant in that way, where it's just like, oh, they're lovable and British. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Nicole's choice of Hugh Laurie.
All right, and Rudy, what's your choice?
So I enjoyed when Jack was saying that Neil can, he's kind of like Ray Liotta, Neil's character, where it's like every time you see him, you're like, oh, he's a villain. You have like a biased opinion against him. But you also said how he could be kind of insecure. Like I remember him in Walking Tall facing off against The Rock, and he was intimidated. Like he knew like when he met his match. And but I thought that you trying to take down Nicole, you really got clothesline there when she was talking about how Hugh Laurie did have the comedic background to him that I'd completely forgotten about. But Chelsea, you were also saying that Todd, how he has that nice look about him, and he can also be the villain. And I could just that's like the essence of who Vernon is. And that scene when he's in the closet with Bender, and he's telling him how I can go and tell everybody that I could attack you, and then you could try to tell people what happened, and they wouldn't believe you because I'm the principal and I have this background, this reputation. And so he needs to be charming. He needs to be a nice guy in front of the parents. And also, I couldn't see like you said, Neil's character walking around with a toilet seat, like the rear protector thing latched onto his butt. Just like I can't see Neil being comedic, even though George Angel's in the outfield. I think I'm gonna go with Chelsea's opinion. Todd.
So that's going to be that's 1 for Todd, 1 for Neil, and 2 for Hugh Laurie. So looks like Hugh Laurie will be our Vernon. All right, so let's move on to the next round.
I gotta check out, guys. I'm sorry.
Oh no,
Enjoy
yeah,
the
that's
rest of the
okay.
debate, okay?
That's okay, Jack. We enjoy your time being here. So take care, and we will head on with the next round. It's going to be the character of Brian Johnson, of course, played by Anthony Michael Hall. He is the quote-unquote brain of the group. He gets into detention for having a flare gun in his locker. He feels pressured by his parents to get good grades. Even the fact of getting an F in woodshop affects him heavily, even though it's pretty much just an elective. And he's the awkward, shy one of the group, the one that's always getting kind of picked on by John. He doesn't really stand up for himself until the end, where they're all sitting around in a circle, and he brings out his emotions, he brings out his rawness. And again, Anthony Michael Hall played that character brilliantly. But we're gonna cast Brian for 2020. So let's start with Chelsea. Who's your choice for Brian?
My choice for Brian was David Mazouz. Most people probably know him as Bruce Wayne from the TV show Gotham. He did a great job in that, portraying Bruce Wayne and eventually Batman for like one episode. But he also, what really sold me was he was the autistic kid in The Darkness, which was actually one I mentioned in my last debate because Rhoda Mitchell was in it. But he was the child of Kevin Bacon and Rhoda Mitchell, and in that movie, and he was autistic, and he really, like, it proved that not only can he act well and he has that diverse range, but he can pull off the nerdy look because he's a pretty good looking kid. But in that movie, they gave him the glasses and kind of some, like button downs and stuff, polos. And he wasn't necessarily a nerd, but he was autistic, and that's often grouped together because autistic kids are usually very intelligent. And I really could see him as the oppressed, shy, nerdy kid who might just bring a gun to school, and he's a little bit shorter. He's 5'9", so he could pull that off because Anthony Michael Hall was shorter than the other actors in the movie, and so it really helped bring up, it really helped with that look. It helped with him being the shy, nerdy, oppressed kid, with him being a little bit shorter than the other actors, and he's David came to my mind while I was watching the movie, and I was just kind of watching it who can I see him as? And I thought of him for a little bit. I was thinking of him as Andrew, and the more I thought of his acting and what I've seen him in, the more I thought he would just be great for Brian, especially like I said, after seeing him as the autistic kid, I really think that he could pull it off really well.
All right, Nicole, who's your choice for Brian?
So I picked Charlie Plummer. So he was in a couple of things. So what I really know him from is Looking for Alaska. So it's based off of a book. It was a small miniseries on Hulu. Now I am going back to the original, even though I know that's non-existent, but John Hughes wanted reoccurring actors in his film. He wanted his little group to take with him wherever, and the role of Brian and the role of Claire, Molly and Anthony Michael Hall, those were his little babies. So I picked someone who Charlie Plummer has been involved with in a previous project along with my director, just to keep it succinct. Now with Charlie Plummer, his character in Looking for Alaska, he is the outcast. He is the new kid. He is extremely intelligent. Not to mention he's a writer. Brian, at the end of it, he's the one who is forced upon to write the letter. So in Looking for Alaska, he was the guy that was always picked on. He was very, very troubled. And just to give another example, the dinner. So the dinner is another thing that he was involved in, another version of a troubled kid. So as much as the character of Brian tries to hide the fact that he's perfectly normal, a bit of an outcast, an introvert, you can see that there's pain deep down in there. And Charlie Plummer has successfully portrayed that on screen in both of those examples.
All right, Nicole, Chelsea, debate it out.
So for Chelsea's choice, I honestly think it's a really good choice because he kind of reminds me of Griffin Gluck, which I almost put in for Brian. He was an American Vandal. But I just feel like he almost, now that he's a little bit older, looks too cool. And we got to keep the I'm not the coolest kid in school look. I mean, I know that can change, of course, with hairstyles and everything, but he almost kind of gives off the I'm a bully kind of villainy vibe, just by physical appearance. Don't judge me, but I have not seen Gotham. But looking through some of his photos and some of his previous works, that's just the vibe that I personally got off of. So yeah, go for it.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I've never seen anything that Charlie Plummer was in, but looking at his photos, he's creepy. I mean, personally, I was like, wow, he kind of looks like somebody that could portray like the Joker. So to me, he actually gives off a little bit of a villainy vibe. But I think that for David, he, like you said, I mean, and like what I mentioned with his role in The Darkness, you know, with makeup, with props, you know, I mean, Anthony Michael Hall didn't have braces, you know, that was a prop. And I feel that Anthony Michael Hall is actually a good looking kid. So it was, they nerdified him, you know, like they nerdified him in a bunch of movies, you know, in most of those movies when he was a teenager, but I still think that he was good looking. So you can nerdify someone and they can still be a good looking kid. But I think that especially if you take away, like, you know, his Bruce Wayne look, David's, if you take away his Bruce Wayne look, he is very nerdy looking. He's a good looking kid, but he is quite nerdy looking, and he can really pull off that look. You know, just stick him in a polo shirt, put some fake braces on him, and maybe some glasses too. And he really strikes me as the quiet type. And that was another thing, like from The Darkness, he was very quiet. And he can do a lot of acting while still being that quiet, reserved kid who at the same time is kind of scary, because he was scary in The Darkness too. Like, not like scary, like, you know, you're scared of him, but scary like I said, the type of kid who could bring a gun to school. Like, he brought these ancient stones into their house in The Darkness, and they ended up like threatening the entire family, and he was so like innocent that nobody even thought it was because of him, and he was just like, oh, they're my friends, I talk to them. And you know, I really think that he could be that kid, like you don't even know that he's under that much pressure. Like, you get a sense in the movie like, oh yeah, he's really under some pressure, but you don't think, like when he says they found a gun in my locker, it's like, wait, what? And I just, that's why I think that he would be really good for that. And then, like I said, I've just never seen anything that Charlie's been in, so I can't go for acting ability. I can just go on looks, and for me personally, I think David fits the role.
Well, I just think David's look is a little too chiseled. I know Charlie Plummer, he has a little bit of a softer look to him, so I feel like he gives off a more of an innocent vibe. I know you may not have seen hold on. You may not have seen anything Charlie Plummer's been in. However, his performance had me in tears the entire series. He is the definition of an outcast kid. You may find him creepy on his profile, like on his IMDb, but when you watch the series, you sympathize for him. Anthony Michael Hall, he was typecast as a kid. You know, he purposely left this genre so he could no longer be that nerdy kid. And Charlie Plummer, he is the outcast, a bit of a nerd that gets picked on in this series. And not to mention, in the dinner, his parents, the whole premise of the film are his parents are coming together to discuss their kids who have committed a crime. So we know that, you know, Charlie Plummer does have this darker side to him, and it can easily portray that role just a little bit on the softer side, because Brian's character, your heart breaks for him and you just want to help him. And I think that Charlie Plummer could do that really well.
Just really quick, what you said about David looking too chiseled, I mean, I think Charlie Plummer has amazing cheekbones. I think he is very chiseled looking. He has a square jaw, high cheekbones. I think I said that some of his pictures are creepy looking, but I also think that he's just too pretty for the role. And then also, as like you said, that innocence, like David can really pull off that look. Like he's adorable. Even now that he's getting older, like it was kind of hard for me to think of him as Bruce Wayne. You know, like they did some CGI work on him in the last few episodes so that he looked like an older Bruce Wayne. And in fact, in the very last one, they didn't even show him. They didn't recast him. They just had like his voice, and then they showed like a far away shot of him as Batman, but they didn't even show him. And I think that's because he's just so sweet and innocent looking, even though he can be handsome, like that. I don't think that people would have bought him as Batman.
All right. The last thing I'll say is that I'm just going off of how John Hughes helped with the casting process. He had the same two people consistently throughout the work. So I just took two actors from that project along with one of the directors and kept it succinct. So got it.
But we're going as though the original never happened. So.
But we're consistently bringing up the previous actors who were in. I'm eating a carrot in the middle of this. who did the original. So we've consistently brought up Anthony Michael Hall. We've brought up the original Vernon, the original Carl, the original director, using them to our advantage for this present day film that no one has apparently ever heard of.
Right, but not the original ways they interacted with each other.
We can agree to disagree for that then.
Okay, nice debates, you two. These are two really good choices here. Rudy, I'm gonna start with you first. What do you think?
Well, I thought it was kind of a stalemate at times. I almost thought that they were really helping each other out at moments and saying, well, I could kind of see your character as a villain, or I could kind of see yours as, because he's Brian's character, as much as he seems like a goody two shoes, he's kind of a jerk. Like when he reveals like the reason why he takes shop classes, because he's like, oh, because idiots take shop class or something like that. So he does have like a dark side to him, and I hadn't seen either of your actors in much before, but I liked how Chelsea, you said that the actor from Gotham, how he kind of meets he's shorter and he looks like he's somebody that could be picked on, and I think that I would go with your pick, the actor from Gotham. And did you say The Darkness?
Yeah. David.
Okay, so we got one vote for David Masseuse. This was a tough one for me because, like we said, this debate went back and forth, and you two counted each other, but at the same time, you kind of convinced why the other's choice was better, and that kept going on and on. So this is a difficult decision for me. I like the choice of Charlie Plummer. I like that Nicole brought up that he could play the outcast. And even though I too have never seen a lot he was in, I'm solely what Nicole said about every time she watches any of his performances, that it just brings you to tears. And that's something you need for Brian, especially in the scene where they're in a circle talking about their issues, and Brian talking about pressure. The pressure he feels of being the perfect student, of being the perfect smart kid for his parents, and hiding a gun in his locker and all that. It's a heartbreaking scene. It really tears you up, and I think you need someone who could bring a lot of emotions. Bring that. David Masseuse, I've not seen a lot of Gotham. I've seen some stuff of Gotham. I've seen some of his work. He's a pretty solid young actor. I like that Chelsea brought that he could pull off a nerdy look. He could have played an oppressed and shiny, nerdy kid. I think Gotham kind of worked as an advantage, and both as an advantage and a disadvantage to David Masseuse, because the more Gotham went on, the more confidence David looked. He was no longer that scared kid that watched his parents die in the alleyway. As Gotham went on, he became more of he was starting to slowly become the personality that Batman is, and he grew more confident. He grew more. He was able to stand up to the bad guys more. So when I look at David, I look at him as a kid who wouldn't be picked on as much because of that. With Charlie Plummer, I could see this dude as someone who is shy, who is a bit of an outcast, and who shelters himself from other people, and has a lot of inner demons in him that he doesn't feel comfortable about talking about. So my choice is to go into Nicole's candidate of Charlie Plummer. What do you think, George?
This is a tough one because I'm not really familiar with either of them, and Nicole and Chelsea both put up really good points. I don't watch a lot of TV, so I'm not familiar with Looking for Alaska. Gotham is one of my sister's favorite shows, so I've only seen Gotham because of that. And I don't quite know him well as Bruce Wayne, but just looking at their pictures on IMDb and just kind of looking at their work, I think I am going to go with David Mazouz. He just seems like kind of like Chelsea pointed out. He's good looking, but he definitely kind of has like a good looking nerd vibe. I mean, you guys might not believe this, but I was pretty good looking in high school, and look at me now. But being attractive doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a nerd. And kind of like thank you. Kind of like Chelsea was pointing out, he's played an autistic kid, and I think that autistic and nerdy, or whatever terms people want to use to lump people together, they all get kind of lumped together. But I feel like David Mazouz can kind of pull off, from what I've seen, the kind of like handsome, likable nerd. So I'm gonna go with David Mazouz.
So far, it's 2 for David and 1 for Charlie. Jessica, what do you think?
Well, in this instance, like, I haven't seen any of Charlie Plummer's work, and I have seen all of Gotham, but kind of like Curtis said, I feel like that Gotham angle, and that's where we know him from, has kind of worked against him, because as David gets older, he does get more confident in his work. He's very good looking. He almost, and like, unfortunately, this is just the way that Hollywood works. We work off looks. I felt like, would have fit better for almost like a Judd Nelson type, where it's like a troublemaker. He has a little bit of a dark side, a little bit more of a mysterious side. When comparing the two looks, like, they're both, of course, very young, good-looking kids, but to me, Charlie, his look is softer than David's. It just is. Yes, he has good cheekbones and a good jawline, but he still has almost like a cherubic energy to his face. David, I just feel like he would have fit better as almost a bully or the bad boy, just because with how he's kind of presenting himself with his acting as of late and how he looks would just fit into that category better. And although I haven't seen Looking for Alaska, just Nicole kind of giving a synopsis of like the kind of character he is, it sounds almost like we plucked Brian from this movie and put him into another project. So I would have more faith in Charlie fulfilling that role, because we have seen that he has stuff on his resume to show that he's backed up that role. Whereas with David, he might have a couple that have hints of it, but nothing that would really solidify for me a choice in putting him in a role like this. So for me, I'm going to go with Charlie Plummer.
All right, so we are in an interesting situation here. We got a tie between David and Charlie. Both have 2 points. Unfortunately, we do not have Jack here to be our tiebreaker. What I was thinking is, would you mind if we did a coin flip on it?
George or Curtis. George, hi. Curtis, whatever works for you, man. I'm good.
How about you,
Do
Chelsea?
your thing.
I just want to be fair.
I kind of feel like since it's a debate, someone should decide. Like, I feel like a coin toss is just, you're leaving it to fate. I mean, I hate to drag it out and maybe like, wait until Jack can put a word in or something, but I really feel like it should be decided by someone.
Okay. Well, since since I'm the host and the declaration judge, I will decide. I think I'm going to go with my original choice for Charlie Plummer.
Well, but that was already your original choice. How is that fair?
Okay.
It should be a non-interested party. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all fun, and it's Curtis's baby. I mean, I would say that even if it was your choice. So.
You can call my mom if you guys want. See what she thinks.
Okay. Let me see. All right. So since we came to a tie between these 2 characters, we are going to it's a tie between David Mazouz and Charlie Plummer. Now we're going to leave this up to a choice to our frequent judges and debaters. of our cast the feature episodes on our private Facebook page. So when this episode airs, you're gonna vote on the decision, and in a couple of days we'll announce who officially got the role, if it's David Masseuse or Charlie Plummer. So for now, we are going to say that it is a tie between David Masseuse and Charlie Plummer for the role of Brian. So that is the end of the third round. All right, so we're going to be going into round 4. And in this round, we are going to be casting the roles of hold on just a second. I will kind of lost my place here. Casting roles of both Allison Reynolds and Andrew Clark. Of course, Allison is played by Ali Sheedy, and Andrew Clark played by Emilio Estevez. Allison is the nutcase of the group. She's quiet. She's always in the background, always doing weird stuff. Whether that's sprinkling her dandruff onto her artwork, or making a sugar and Captain Crunch sandwich and removing the bologna, doing all sorts of weird stuff, saying weird stuff. And we got Andrew Clark, the athlete of the group, played by Emilio Estevez, who is on the wrestling team. Andrew gets into detention for messing with another one of his fellow athletes, and Allison gets into detention because she just says she's just there. She's just there because she has nothing better to do. She's a mysterious character, but we know by the end, both of them do get together as a couple, and they do share a couple of scenes of building up their chemistry and building up their relationship throughout the film. So we are going to cast them together in the same round. Nicole, who is your choice for Andrew and Allison?
So for Allison, I chose Vernon from The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. I picked her because she is the outcast in the TV show, although she is the star, but she is the outcast in the school. She just never feels like that she can find a place to fit in, which is why she tries to do both. I feel like she can portray, it's almost like Allison is definitely a bit grungy. And I think that Kernan can definitely pull off that grungy, very quiet, reserved, because we've got to remember that Allison doesn't speak for the first 33 minutes. So we have to acknowledge the fact that she's there, but she does keep a bit of a quiet, yet look at me at the same time. And then for Andrew Clark, I chose Lucas Hedges. Originally, Emilio Estevez was known for Repo Man and The Outsiders, both very dramatic roles. For Lucas Hedges, and also he was the most known of the one of the most well-known of the actors in the original film. Lucas Hedges, he's been a part of a lot of Oscar-nominated and winning movies. Just by looking at him, you could be like, yeah, wrestler, I can believe that. He doesn't have too many comedic breaks. Honestly, you can see that he's extremely troubled, and he has some of the more serious lines in the film. And I know that Lucas Hedges could successfully deliver those and deliver that character to be believable, just like we did in the original with Emilio.
Chelsea, who's your choice for Allison and Andrew?
So my choice for Allison was Amanda Stenberg. She was originally first really blew everybody away as Rue in the Hunger Games, and she also starred alongside my pick for Andrew, Nick Robinson, in the movie Everything Everything. I feel like she's really good for this role because she's beautiful, but she can play the shy, quiet type while still making a statement and allowing her acting ability to shine. One of the things that Ali Sheedy did with the character was that she really only used facial expressions and physical actions in the first half of the movie. She barely spoke, and then in the second half was when she really came out and started talking. And Amanda can really do that too. She's she just has this expressiveness about her face that she can really pull off the shyness without even having to say anything. She can still be expressive in her face. And I really liked that about her. And she has been in just some great movies. She was an activist in the movie The Hate U Give. And she was a high school student who witnesses a shooting of an unarmed Black teenager and has to decide if she wants to testify before a grand jury. And so that for me was like, I mean, she just, all of the things I've seen her in, she can really be like a strong actress without even needing to say a lot. And just that's what I really like about her. And then Nick Robinson, who I said also was in Everything, across from her, he also was a closeted gay teenager in Love, Simon. And he was the aloof and troubled older brother in Jurassic World. So for me, both of these roles allowed me to see him as a great choice for Andrew, because he can play a rough and tough guy who later ends up showing his sweet and shy side once certain events have happened or certain facts come to light. And that's kind of how he was in the movie. You know, Andrew was just a tough guy, and then he eventually broke down and shared more of himself and became this nicer guy, and you realize that it was just pressure from his father, and that was the only reason that he was the way he was. And I feel like Nick also has the look of a wrestler and a jock, because he's in shape enough, like Emilio Estevez was, but not so buff that he's like overly intimidating. Like, he's also tall. Nick is actually 6 feet, and I like that because it makes him a bit more daunting over Bender. Because you know, if you pick somebody who is either 6 feet or even a little bit below that, Estevez was very short compared to Bender, but I like that Nick is a bit taller because since he's taller but not insanely ripped, you can still believe that he could, like the guy who plays Bender could pull off not being afraid of him, and thinking he could take him, like especially when he has a knife. Like, even though Nick is tall, he's not super ripped, so Bender could still be like, I could take this guy, you know. So that's that's why I like Nick.
All right, Chelsea, Nicole, debate it out.
So for Chelsea's choices, I don't think I would want to hear, or to lack of hearing, Amanda. Is that how I pronounce her name?
I believe so.
Okay. I think that she has too much of a strong presence. I would want to see her speak up. I think that she commands the room, especially in The Hate U Give. Allison is supposed to be the more quiet one. She's quirky. I know Kernan is definitely, she gives me that kind of vibe, although she is very cutesy as well, but we can see that she can be both. But in the roles that Amanda's playing in The Hate U Give, she is just, like I said, she commands it. Not to mention, with Nick and Amanda, their love interest has been there, done that. They were both in Everything. I feel like if the audience went to go see Breakfast Club, we're not supposed to know that the jock and the basket case end up together. And I feel like if, you know, this genre is directed to the same audience, or very similar to Everything, that they would be like, oh, I love them too when they get together in that movie. I hope they do. Oh, and they do. So, yeah.
On that note, I think that actually has something going for them, because they've already shown that they have good chemistry together, and kind of what you were going back to in choosing the same actors for a movie like with this. It could be that, you know, they've seen them work together, like the director has seen them work together and feels like, you know, they do play well off of each other and they do make a great couple on screen. And so even if people went into it expecting them to get together, I kind of feel like from the first moment that you see them interact in the movie and you see the way she looks at him, like that character, Ali Sheedy's character, you get this feeling like she's got a crush on him, and you think, yeah, they're probably going to end up together. And whereas with Amanda, she can be the quiet type. I mean, I know she was younger when she did it, but when she was Rue, she was very shy, very reserved, and didn't speak a lot, and still had a commanding presence. And that's something that Allison has. She has a commanding presence. Even though she's shy, you still are aware of her through the whole movie, and you really feel like just the actions she does speak even louder than her words. And I really feel like Amanda could do that. Whereas with your pick, the actress that does Sabrina, I feel that she's just so pretty. Like, she's really pretty. And I love Sabrina. I watch it all the time. So I feel like for her, she's too much for that role. She's too pretty, and I can't see her as being that quiet, because she's such a strong, like, in your face, I'm not going to take anybody's crap character in Sabrina. And she always is off doing her own thing. I just can't see her as the quiet, almost goth type that Allison is. And as for the other, for Lucas, for Andrew, I honestly have never seen anything that he's been in, so I can't speak to his acting ability. But as far as looks, I can actually really see him as Brian. Like, he looks like Anthony Michael Hall, kind of, he looks like he could fill that role really well, like the nerdy role. And I feel like Nick Robinson is just, he can be quiet, but still a tough guy. And just from the movies I've seen him in, he really pulls that off. He really pulls off that quiet reservedness, who can still, he's like, I'm going to stand up for my girl, or I'm going to stand up for myself. And, and yet he's still got that, like, I don't want to let everybody know who I am, which is who he was in Love, Simon. He was really, like, he was a good friend. He was a good guy. He was a really great, strong character, but he didn't want people to know who he was. And then he ends up he's forced to come out and tell everybody that. And that's kind of how Brian is in the movie. He's not Brian, Andrew in the movie, because he's he's very, like, he's a tough guy, but he is still a little bit hidden. And then all of a sudden he's forced to come out and tell everybody, look, the only reason I'm in here is because I can't think for myself. I was forced to do something that I felt my dad would have done. And so that really tied it in for me.
Yeah, but also Lucas had just starred in Boy Erased. And so he was a closeted gay little boy who couldn't be true to himself because his dad was a Baptist preacher. So he can too convey those very deep, heavy emotions. But in my opinion, Lucas Hedges has a very all-American look, especially when his head is shaved. In addition, the love story between Allison and Andrew, you're supposed to simply allude to it and hope for it. But these people that have seen everything, they already saw and hoped for it, and they got it. And so now anytime that they see them together in a future film, they're going to be like, yeah, that's going to be what happens. And sure enough, that's what's going to go down. I know that you touched on the point that I made about the director, Brian and Claire, but I didn't really think that you agreed with me touching on that. So, but it's just a different instance, of course. It's a bit different, but I just feel like with the two of them paired together, we've already seen it.
Well, I think that what you said about that, with them being, people have seen it and they've already waited for it and they've already wanted it to happen. Well, you can still want it to happen. I mean, I've seen tons of movies where there are couples in it, like Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. Like, they've been in, I think, 3 movies together, and same with like Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler. And I never get tired of their chemistry. I still want to watch it. I'm not like, oh God, another movie with these two. They're obviously going to end up together. Yeah, they are. But you still want to watch it because they're good and their chemistry is good. And that's why I think that regardless of the fact that they've already been together and they've already gotten together in a movie, I think that they would be great together. And that's partially why, because you have already seen them together and you do know that they have chemistry. So it's like, well, why not get together again? And yet there's still that mystery throughout the whole thing. It's not like you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna get together, I don't need to watch this movie. Like, you can still enjoy the ride.
Yeah, that's not the tone that I was giving, though. I wasn't like, oh, dear God, here we go again. Of course, we can always hope for the same two actors getting together, but that's not the tone of this movie. This is a tone of bringing two very different people together, and it's really nice seeing it for the first time on screen with these characters and these actors that were brought together.
But you are seeing this for the first time. Those characters, that's not who they played in Everything. They're playing two different characters. So you still don't know for sure that they're going to get together. It's just a matter of enjoying
the facial expressions that they give.
Those two together.
You can sense it, but
I was still talking. So, yeah, that's my point. Just, I think that it doesn't get old. I think that those two are great together, and I don't see a point. I don't see how people would be upset at seeing them together again.
Well,
if their chemistry works, why not?
Not the point I was making, and I just don't agree that that is the tone of the movie. But you already said when you first watched the movie, you can tell in her facial expression that she has a crush on him. So I just feel like that's just a flip-flopped argument.
But that's the point. Like, you can tell, so there is no surprise there. You don't have to sit there and be like, oh my God, are they going to end up together? Like, you already pretty much know. And so if people go into it going, I love these two as a couple, they're not going to be upset that they do end up as a couple. They're not going to be like, oh, I already knew that they were going to end up as a couple because I've seen them in this movie. Because from the beginning of the movie, you can tell, like, these people are probably going to end up together.
I just think it's supposed to be more taboo than that. And that's why these two actors for the first time coming together and actually falling for one another is so good when it comes to this movie. But I know it's drug on, so I apologize, you all. I'm done.
All right. So there's we got our debate in. Great choices, great arguments. I'm a big fan of every one of these actors and actresses here. But I'm gonna need a little bit more time to make my decision. So I'm gonna start with Booty. What do you think?
That's extremely challenging. I thought I knew who was gonna win going into this, and I had no idea by the end. I'm still making up my mind. See, it's I really like the actress from Sabrina being chosen for this, and I know that Chelsea said that she plays like that maybe you couldn't see her because she looks like pretty, but she's like if I'm not mistaken, in Sabrina doesn't she kind of have like that gothic about her because she's a witch? I don't know if those two are synonymous. It's the actress that played Rue in Hunger Games. If I'm not mistaken, she was practically a mute in that movie. So it would be really like that seems like it would be perfect casting. I had no idea that the actor from Manchester by the Sea that he was in, Lucas Hedges, that he also played a gay character, and I was really looking forward to maybe the actor from Love, Simon. Being in there. See, that's such an interesting choice. Somebody who's had that background because he had to unveil that, but both actors have had to unveil that secret to their family members in movies. And now he'd be playing the exact opposite because they have to act across Ali Sheedy's character who like lets out all of her baggage onto them. And I do think that this Lucas Hedges that he's got. I agree with you, maybe Nicole, that he has like the more the body, the build to play the athlete than the actor from Love, Simon would. So is it possible to choose one actor from Is it possible to mix
You have
match?
to choose either Nicole or Chelsea's choices, so it's their parents, and she's one of their parents.
Okay, cool. So I think I'm gonna go with Nicole's choices.
Which are
Edges, right?
Lucas Hedges and Kieran Shipka, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So this one was a tough one for me because, again, as I said, I love all four of these actors / actresses. If we're either of these girls, I would love either of these girls to play play Allie. I think either of them could do a magnificent job on it. So, for me, the decision point comes to who's the Andrew, and for me, I think Nick Robinson has more of that Andrew to him, especially with stuff like Love, Simon. I love what Chelsea brought up about how aside from being already in a movie with Amanda Stenberg, beside that fact, that didn't go to my vote all that much, but I think experience what she said about him having a tough exterior, but he shows some softness. He still has that look of a jock. With his experience with Love, Simon, he could play those characters who has that exterior of being popular, of being this good-looking kid who's the athlete, who's the jock, who's the one that everyone strives to be. But on the inside, he has this softness to him, this vulnerability, especially when he opens up to Brian, John Bender, and Allison and Claire. When she opens up to them and he starts breaking down about how he feels pressured to do things how his dad used to do, and how he can't think on his own. He has to have people tell him what to do in order to be in order to strive to be a man. And then I think Nick Robinson, in some of his movies, he plays characters who deals with almost similar situations. With Lucas Hedges, as much as I love Lucas Hedges and an incredible actor he is, I just think I think his exterior shows a little bit much toughness. I mean, I could see him more as John Bender. I can't really see him as Andrew Clark, the good-looking guy who will stand up to bully. Because remember, in the beginning of the movie, John and Andrew have a bit of a tension, and so I could see more of Nick being that one who's going to stand up and and he's going to get into John Bender's face and tell him to get away from Claire and not to provoke her and all of that. So my choice is going to go with Chelsea's pairing of Amanda Stenberg and Nick Robinson. How about you, George?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like Rudy was saying, I'm keep going back and forth because Nicole and Chelsea both put up really good points. And again, it's another problem where I haven't really seen these actors in a lot of things. I'm familiar with Nick Robinson because of Jurassic World. And it's funny because I didn't really like his character in that movie, but he did kind of play kind of a jerk, jerk athletic guy who turns out to kind of have like a sensitive side too. And I feel like that's obviously very important to Andrew. And it's also true that with sorry, I have my notes here. With Nicole's choice, Lucas Hedges, I do think he looks a lot like Anthony Michael Hall. I actually made that note before it was brought up. But also, he, just from his picture, he looks more like Anthony Michael Hall, but he is really buff like Andrew. But I do like that Chelsea mentioned that Nick Robinson and Amanda have played a couple before. I don't necessarily think that's a problem. Maybe, since the Breakfast Club doesn't exist, we are going to go in not knowing if Allison and Andrew are going to get together. But I think it would be cool to have these actors that have worked together and that have chemistry and can kind of from the beginning, we're kind of seeing looks between the two of them, and that maybe Allison, is attracted to Andrew, like Chelsea mentioned. So it's really hard, but I think I'm going to go with Chelsea's choices with Amanda and Nick Robinson.
All right. Jessica, what do you think?
This is hard because I could see either of these pairings working for this. Like, I have confidence that the actors could portray the roles. What kind of stuck out to me is that I just having seen the movie and knowing the characters, I agreed with Nicole's point that the pairing is supposed to be a little bit more taboo and you shouldn't see it coming. And I worry that audiences watching it, they're just going to assume that because they've seen these two actors together. And I know that Amanda is a fantastic actress, and she has portrayed like almost a mute character in The Hunger Games, but that was also over 10 years ago. And I feel like with her as an actress, she's kind of been there, done that. I think she would want to go for more powerful roles, like her role in The Hate U Give, that I feel like she would want something that was a little bit more of a challenge to her, especially since she's becoming more mainstream and she's getting into more projects. With the character of Allison and just the fact that she's supposed to be like a goth look, like we know that Kiernan can pull off that look because that's her look in Sabrina. It's a very gothic look. Lucas Hedges, phenomenal actor, but not as recognizable as Nick Robinson, which I feel like that might be a disadvantage to Nick because he's so recognizable. Lucas Hedges is one that you know him and you know his name, but he hasn't really hit in like a big kind of blockbuster kind of way. He usually does like the Oscar movies. And seeing his performance in Boy Erased, he knows how to keep it vulnerable while still having that tough exterior to him. So with that, I'm going with Nicole's choice of her pairing. I wish I could have picked one from one and one from the other, but because it's a pairing, that's what I'm going with.
All right. So, is this another tie? Because it's two for Kieran and
Curtis, if it's another tie, what do you think about? Would you be down to split up the pairs
was
and see
thinking
if
that
the
too.
thing would end up different? See if the outcome would be different. See if it would still be a tie.
Yeah, like if we split them, I think because since both the other, or two of the other judges, think that it should be split. So maybe if we do that, it won't be a tie anymore.
And it's not like we've got to do any description or anything. They just spat off this person, and it could still be a pair who we don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we'll do that. So instead of the judges explaining, because we would pretty much explain already what we like about each and what we disagree about these actors and actresses. So we're just gonna go around and just say the name of the boy and girl who we go with. So for Allison, I'm going to go with Amanda, and for Andrew, I'm gonna go with Nick. Okay, Rudy.
For Ali Sheedy's character, I'm going to go with Nicole's choice. And for the character of Andrew, I'm going to go with Chelsea's.
All right, that's okay. So it's George.
Yeah, I think I'm still gonna go with Chelsea's choices with Nick and Amanda. I like the two of them separately and together.
So are you gonna go with Nick and Amanda?
Nick and Amanda, yeah.
Okay. And Jessica.
I would go with Kiernan and Nick.
All right, so
it means we have a tie for Allison, right?
Yeah. So we got we got another tie for Allison. So we're gonna do that later after I post the video. I'll post up a poll on Facebook for y'all to vote whether you want Amanda or Kiernan Shipka to play Allie. But we do have our definitive Andrew, which is Nick Robinson. All right. Let me just put this in my notes here. All right. All right. So let's go on to the next round, and this is round uh round five, and we are going to be casting the roles of John Bender and Claire Standish. Claire Standish, of course, played by Molly Ringwald. John Bender, played by Judd Nelson, and John is the criminal of the group. He's the rebel. He's the smart aleck. He's the one. He gets into tension with both assistant principal Vernon and Wits Andrew Clark. But of course, throughout the film, he and Andrew start to open up to each other, and they become friends by the end of the film. And he's the one he's kind of the provoker. He's the one who he's kind of observer as well. He observes by just looking at the lunches that the kids bring. He just kind of knows what home life they live. He's kind of pretty much insecure about his own home life as well, which is why he mocks the others. But he does open up to the others, and we finally see why he's so troubled, and he provokes the other kids to open up about themselves as well, so he can see who their real personality is. And with Claire, she is the princess of the group who gets into detention by ditching school and going shopping. But she has a kind of a tough life in the behind the scenes as well. Her parents rarely speak to each other. They kind of use her as a weapon to as who they like who she likes better, and um, she tries to highlight a lot of things. She feels pressured, a lot of peer pressure of not letting people know that she is not like typical high school girls. Um, she's not the that she's afraid people will find out that she is a virgin, and all this stuff, and she's afraid of speaking out, but by the end she does. So let's cast Claire and John Bender, since the two of them kind of share a relationship with each other, and they have, like Allie and Andrew, they have chemistry building throughout the film. So Nicole, who's your choice for Claire and John?
So for John, I picked Daniel Sharman. So he is most recently on the new TV show Cursed on Netflix. He was a massive villain in Fear the Walking Dead. And so for Claire, it's Christine Broseph. She is the other lead in the TV show Looking for Alaska. So I, of course, chose her again, not only because of her talent and her previous character development and other things, but also because Charlie Plummer co-starred. That's Anthony Michael Hall and Molly Ringwald, including the director for one of the episodes. Now with Christine, she has played both the goody popular Mean Girl. There we go, Mean Girl. And in Looking for Alaska, she wanted to be perceived as a confident, feminine young woman. However, she was hiding a lot. She would say things, but not necessarily mean them, just for her to seem cool and to be always just kind of elusive. But really, she just wanted the people to think of her as one thing when really deep down she was feeling another. Because I feel like all of these characters, they have a lot of pain behind their eyes, no matter what group they were involved in high school. Now for Daniel, he's the bad boy. He has that look of a bad boy. He's got that shaggy look, and I feel like for Bender, it's kind of not very put together. It's kind of supposed to look dirty, but for me, Bender is my favorite character. I can't help but have a crush on Bender, even though it's maybe absolutely ridiculous. But I like the grungy kind of look and aesthetic to him. And of course, he grows a lot during the film. Also with Daniel, he too is a method actor. Before Cursed, he hung out with monks for weeks to really get into character. Judd Nelson did the same thing. He actually picked on Molly Ringwald outside of the set. He stayed in character as Bender, so much so that John Hughes would constantly get on him. Him and John Hughes just don't even have a good, they just didn't have a good relationship after that. But them both being a method, and then for Christine being the popular girl, I know that she can play that in addition to being troubled and being perceived as one thing, but really deep down feeling another. I think that they would make a great pair.
All right. Chelsea, who's your choice for John Bender and Claire Standish?
My choice for John Bender is Evan Yogia. He played the cool kid on Nickelodeon's Victorious TV show, and then also the troubled kid on the show Twisted, which was on ABC Family. And so he has experience with both sides of Bender's personality. He's been both the bad guy and the cool guy, and so he's like, that. And then he really has the look. I think that Avon is really just a good looking guy, and like he has that darker look about him, so he really, to me, just fits the role perfectly. He's tall enough. He's like 5'11", so I really feel that that's good, because that was something I really noticed with Bender, was how tall he was, and how he kind of towered over everybody. And he's got the dark, mysterious look, like I said, but he's handsome enough to remain charming while still insulting everybody in the room. Like he's insulting everybody, and yet you still are like, oh, this guy is still winning me over, because he's charming and he's good looking, and you can't fully hate Bender, even when he's just throwing crap at people. And I really feel like Avon can pull that off. And he's a little bit older. He's 27, but Nelson was 26 when he played Bender. He still looks young, just as Judd Nelson did. So, there's a lot of actors, a lot of films where like early 20-something-year-olds play teenagers, and I think you can get away with that. And especially if your pick for Claire is also around that age, which mine is Elle Fanning. And I really think that, Claire is the princess, and well, Elle has a great experience playing a princess as Aurora in the Maleficent movies. And I think she has the innocent rich girl look about her, but she's down to earth enough not to be too much of a standout. And that's one thing I really liked about Molly Ringwald in the original, was that she wasn't your typical gorgeous prom queen. She was just a beautiful girl, but she wasn't like, she was regular looking and pretty. She wasn't like Victoria's Secret model pretty. And I think that Elle Fanning has that same look. Like she's a really cute and pretty girl, but that's the key thing. She's cute. She's not like amazingly gorgeous. And she's also, she's been in a lot of films. Like people know her, they know her name. And Molly was, pretty well known at that time. Like she had been in enough things that just knowing her range of acting and knowing who she's played, I really think that, between Aurora, and then also she was a small town pretty girl in the movie Super 8. So I think that she could pull that off as well, or pull off that role because of that. She's used to that, just kind of quiet but popular, and not really knowing where she fits in with this group. And I also really could see Avon and Elle like acting off of each other. He hasn't done a whole lot, but he's good in what he's done. And then, like I said before, just his personality and the personality types he has portrayed would fit perfectly with Bender.
All right, Nicole, Chelsea, debate it out.
So, I feel like I agree that Molly Ringwald had a very unique look, and I feel like it should stay that way. It shouldn't be some drop dead gorgeous looking woman to go in and play a princess. And Elle, yes, she does have that very unique look, and I feel like Kristen Kristen does as well. She's known as a pretty girl, but once again, it's like not gorgeous. In addition to that, you know, like we haven't really seen her in much. We've seen her in Looking for Alaska, although I know you all have not seen that. But the only big thing that Molly had done at the time was 16 Candles. So she may be becoming a household name, but she's still new to the game. And I feel like Christine is that as well. In addition, I just think Elle she's just moved on from doing high school movies. I think she's big and she's ready for bigger and better things. I don't know if she would actually do a high school movie. I don't know, just for this being the budget that it was, and just the it's simplicity is what this movie is. It was really just one place, one time. I just think that she maybe looks more like maybe college, if not potentially older. And I just really like the shaggy look of Daniel. I do think that her pick is great and very believable, which, you know, when I saw his name, I'm like, yeah, that's really good. But I just think the look of Daniel Sharman and the way that he acts in Cursed and in Fear of the Walking Dead and everything that he's done, he can definitely portray that I'm a bad boy, I've got demons, but I'm hot. Well, that's the way that I saw Judd Nelson. Not everybody will say that he's hot, but that was just me.
It's funny that you bring up the age of Elle Fanning and how you think that she would more likely be doing like college stuff, because she's actually a year younger than Kristen. And my main concern actually with what's his name, Daniel, he's 34, and that, to me, he's got a good look, I agree, but I mean, that's maybe you could do like a 21 Jump Street, like cast him as, you know, Johnny Depp's character. But I feel like putting him, a 34-year-old and a 23-year-old together in a room full of people we've already cast who are in their early 20s, I feel like even though he does still have a youthful look about him, he's gonna like, it's going to be like when you put Harrison Ford next to Michelle Pfeiffer in What Lies Beneath, and you finally realize how old Harrison Ford is when he's standing next to the gorgeous Michelle Pfeiffer who never ages. And it was like, oh my God, oh, Harrison Ford is old. And I think that if you put a 34-year-old in a room full of actors who are in their early 20s, you're going to end up with like, you're going to be able to see that he's 34.
Well, I didn't mean Elle Fanning as in her age. I just meant as in her acting background. I think that she has matured from doing the high school movie. Judd Nelson, he was, 25 when he started the movie. However, Molly Ringwald, Anthony Michael Hall, they were 16. I don't think Daniel looks to be 34. I think he can still pull off to be a high school bad boy. Judd Nelson, being the age that he was, he even tried to go to a local high school to see if he could enroll, and ended up hanging out with a bunch of high school kids. And I feel like if Daniel tried it, he may succeed. But at the end of the day, I feel like, yeah, sometimes, a lot of the times in this instance, age is just a number, but you have the undeniably difference as two 16-year-olds compared to a 25, 26-year-old. So for that argument, I just feel like that has just gray area to it.
Well, I agree. I even put that in my argument because my actor that I picked is like 26, 27, but I just feel like that's a decade's worth of difference. And yes, Judd Nelson was, 26 when he played Bender, but 26 and 34 are a lot. I mean, I just saying, as somebody who actually is in their mid-30s, yeah, it's way different from when I was in my mid-20s. Not only just acting like as far as like the way I am personally, but looks like there's still, and people tell me I have a baby face, and yet I couldn't pass as a high school student anymore. So, a lot of times I just feel like, when you look at these, when you see high school students in real life, you're like, holy crap, was I ever that young? And then when you see high school students in movies, even if they're in their 20s, you're usually like, yeah, that person isn't really a high school student, but I can believe it. But I couldn't see somebody who's that age pulling off a high school student, no matter how young he is, because some of his more recent pictures that I looked up on the internet, he definitely does look older. He looks at least late 20s. And to me, I can't see that as being a high school student. And then for the female pick, to argue the other argument, I just haven't really seen anything that Kristen's been in, so I can't really say much to that. I agree that her look is like Elle's, very, easygoing, laid back, like pretty, but not like crazy in your face pretty. I just really, from what I've seen Elle do as far as an acting standpoint, I can really see her as that quiet, but like just making those faces at Bender, like when she gets so upset with him, and just really, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but her expressiveness and how emotional she gets. Like when I watch her act, I can feel the emotion and I can feel how angry she is or how upset she is. And I feel for her. And that's how you want to be with Molly's character too. You don't want to like her because she's the princess, she's stuck up, she's pretty, but at the same time, you feel for her by the end of the movie, and you really feel bad when Judd Nelson starts to get into her, and I feel like Elle could really pull that off.
Well, I hope you guys watch Looking for Alaska, because all of those actors will move you to tears. She is fully capable of just really putting in her whole heart and soul into the role, and really moving you all and swaying the preppy popular girl to you just really want to cradle her in your arms and say it's okay.
All right, good debate all around. These are all very interesting choices. I will say, since this is another pairing, we're going to do the vote like we did the last round. We're going to individually choose each actor, not choose the pair, but choose one guy from a pair and one female from a pair. One John Bender from a pair, one Claire. So, Rudy, why don't you go first?
We come back around to me?
Huh?
We come back around to me? I'm still trying to come up with an answer.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, all right. So, I like the arguments you brought for each of your candidates, Chelsea and Nicole. Unfortunately, with Daniel Sharman, he does. I mean, he is a little bit too much older for the role. I think Chelsea's right on that. Even though he does have that bad boy look, if he's a little bit younger, I could totally see him as Bender. But unfortunately, I have no doubt his resume is impressive. It's just it would be kind of odd putting this guy in his mid-30s in a group of early 20-something-year-olds. Christine Frosteth, again, I haven't seen much of her work, but she does have an innocent look to her, as what Nicole explained, and she, I like the vibe that she has experience playing characters who are trying to hide who they really are, who's trying to have this exterior and people make assumptions based on that exterior, but she's really a different character than everyone else perceives her to be, which is pretty much Claire. I can never know how to pronounce this guy's name. Avon Jogia, the guy from Victoria. Huh?
Yogia. Okay.
Avon Yogia. I think I would prefer him over Daniel because he did in his work he did show that he could pull off both Bender's personalities, being this cool kid yet this bad dude, and he can be charming while insulting everyone, and he has a youthful enough look, and advantage that he is about 7 years younger than Daniel. I think that kind of helps. And with Elle Fanning, of course, she's a big name. She's has this down-to-earth personality. She has this cute look, which is appropriate for Claire. She's a recognizable name, of course. The thing is, though, as like when we did the what was it for? I think it was for Jaws. So like I said when we did the episode for Jaws, when Jaws is released today, it wouldn't be a big studio picture. It'd probably be an independent movie. And even though Breakfast Club was a studio movie when it was released by Universal. This is not the type of movie that big studios make today. Maybe something like a Fox Searchlight or an A24 would or an Annapurna would make. And if you're a big studio, you probably go with the more recognizable name, which is Elle Fanning. If you're an A24 or Fox Searchlight, maybe they'll still go for Elle Fanning. I can see them also going for Christine Fawcett, but the movie's tone feels more indie than it feels like a studio. And I think if you're going for indie, the indies tend to look for who has the more potential talent and who's the bigger name. And though Elle Fanning has a lot of talent, she's an incredible actress. I think she came out of her big sister shadow. She's by far the more popular name now. I think it'll be interesting to see what we could get from Christine in this role, since she already has experience playing a character like this. So for Claire, I'm going to go with Christine, but for Bender, I'm going to go with Avon. George, what do you think?
Okay. Yeah, definitely another tough choice. I hate to sound like a broken record, but again, most of these actors, I've not seen them in anything as far as I know. Elle Fanning is the one actor I do know. And I do kind of agree that I think that she's, it's not that she's too old, but I do think that she maybe is too famous and wouldn't want to play high school parts anymore. And I'm not very familiar with Nicole's choice, Christine, but I do think she has that look that Molly Ringwald kind of had, where she's like attractive and she's 25, but she definitely looks a lot younger. So I could definitely believe her being in high school. And as for Bender, I did know too that, yeah, Daniel Sherman is 34. Judd Nelson was, obviously older than high school age. And I feel like with Bender, you can cast a little bit older. If anything, it could even be implied that like he got held back a few years maybe, so maybe he is older than the other characters. But I think that Avon also has that look that Daniel Sherman has. They both kind of have that shaggy look. And Chelsea pointed out that he's played like the troubled kid before. He's played the cool guy before. And I just think he's got a good look. So I'm going to go with Avon for Bender, but then Christine for Molly Ringwald's character.
All right. So you got Avon and Christine. Is that what you said, George? Okay.
Sorry, yeah, Avon and Christine, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So how about let's go to Jessica.
So for this one, I know that like a big stickler seems to be the age. In my personal opinion, Judd Nelson might have been 25. He looked like he was 32. He looked much older than his actual age. And so for me, it's like, especially just how we do things in Hollywood, we go off looks. So you could tell me that Daniel is 54, but if he looks like he does now, where you think that he could believably portray a role, that age, the number in real life is not going to matter. And to me personally, looking at the two pictures, I personally think that Avon looks older than Daniel. And I don't know if it's just because they have a different face shape or just the way that his look is. To me, I just thought that Avon looks a little too mature for the role in comparison to Daniel. I also agree with the statement that Elle Fanning, who is now working with the likes of people like Ben Affleck and Angelina Jolie, she's going on to bigger things. I feel like this would be taking a step back for her. I don't think she would agree to do a project like this, even if she's the biggest name kind of attached to it, because I think she wants to make sure that she's not pigeonholing herself into only doing high school movies that that's not where her passions lie when her career is kind of on the upward trajectory with who she's working with. So yeah, just for me, my choices were Daniel and Kristen.
All right. Let's see. How about? I think we obviously have our Claire, but I think we can still have the vote on Bender. So Rudy, what do you think?
I would have gone with Elle Fanning, and I'll put that in the books that regardless if it's possible for her to come out a winner in this case, I do agree that I think she's a hidden gem. I completely forgot about her since she's been in Super 8 and other things so long ago, and I had to have somebody remind me in these arguments here that she was also in the Maleficent movies, and it may be a step back for her. It feels like going to high school roles, but she's not that much older than a lot of the actors and actresses that we've cast so far. I just think that she's had a wider range of opportunities than maybe other actors and actresses we've talked about today. And I think the choice that I'm going to go for John Bender would be the Avon Yogia actor, because like we were talking about earlier, it does seem like that the Nicole's choice being like decades older than the other actors, and I'm fine with him being a couple of years older than most of our cast. It's too obvious with the other actor. I think that Chelsea's choice for the Yogia is reasonable. He's a great option, great choice. We should go with him.
All right, so I guess it looks like we got our vote. So our Claire Standish will be Christine Fawcett, and our John Bender is going to be Avon Yogia. So we got our cast, but now to our last round, we're going to choose our director. Of course, this movie was directed by the late great John Hughes. Nowadays, I think this is the type of movie that select several of directors could probably do and bring out the same tone. And since unfortunately, of course, John Hughes is not with us anymore, so it wouldn't be possible. But let's choose our director who could bring the same tone, the same vibes that John Hughes has brought to The Breakfast Club. So Chelsea, who's your choice for director?
My choice for director on this was McGee. He's directed the movie This Means War, which is one of my favorite rom-coms. It's a great movie with Reese Witherspoon and Chris Pine and Tom Hardy. And he also produced several seasons of Supernatural. He directed and produced the Babysitter series on Netflix, which is like a colorful, dark comedy featuring teenagers that are involved in a satanic cult, and the kid who's being babysat is trying to stop them. But the main thing that sold me on him was he directed Rim of the World, which was a recent movie, and it's a kid-driven action comedy about a bunch of kids who witness an alien attack while they're up on a mountain camping, and they have to band together and overcome their fears to save the world. And it really sold me because the premise is like kind of similar to Breakfast Club. Like, they're not saving the world, but they do have to band together, overcome their fears and their differences, and it's the kid-driven thing. So just really seeing that one and seeing his direction in that, he really did a great job of pulling the personalities of the kids out in that and allowing each one of them to shine. And then, like I said, just having them showing their struggle and, their fears of having to do this. Like, they basically had to, save their parents and save the town, and they had to overcome a lot. And even though one of the things in Breakfast Club, it's not only that they're overcoming differences, but they are overcoming their fears. They each have a fear of something and that they don't want to share that with everybody else. And so it's kind of the same sort of premise. And he just, everything I've ever seen that McGee has directed, I just think he's done a great job of it. So that was why I picked him.
All right, and Nicole, who's your choice for director?
So I actually chose Clea Duvall. So, I mean, some people may have known her for her acting chops, but she actually, I remember, you know, that John Hughes, he's only directed 16 Candles thus far. Like, that is the only movie that's been on his books. Clea Duvall directed the film called The Intervention. So that's just about where a group of people get together. They think that they're having, you know, a weekend getaway, but in actuality, it's an intervention on marriage trouble. So it's about people overcoming their problems, trials, tribulations, and moving forward for the better. So I feel like it's, you know, it's a very similar kind of dramatic genre. So I wanted to make sure to keep the director in the same kind of realm. In addition, after John Hughes directed 16 Candles, the studio was like, cool, we trust you, go for your more dramatic piece. Clea Duvall has the same opportunity. She's got a movie coming out called Happiest Season. Although it may not be out yet, we're actually testing it with the company I work for, and it's doing extremely well. Not to mention it has some A-list actors, Allison Brie, Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek, Mackenzie Davis, Kristen Stewart, and Clea Duvall is even making a little cameo appearance in it. John Hughes did the same thing. I don't know if you knew this, but he played Brian's dad, Anthony Michael Hall. He's who picks him up at the end. So I just feel like with all those similarities and the direction that Clea Duvall gave and the intervention and what's to come in Happiest Season, I just feel like she'd be a great choice for this.
All right, debate your choice for directors.
I think that for I like Clea Duvall as an actress. Haven't really seen much of her directing. I mean, obviously, if she's only done one thing, I haven't. But I just going with a comparison. I know that, you know, a lot of times, like, we compare the actors, and, you know, we say, well, because he brought this, you know, this actor. But I still think that the background is a little bit of an to me personally, in my opinion, an odd thing to compare, because just saying that, oh, she's only got one film under her belt and so did John Hughes, well, I don't think that should be something that is a deciding factor. I think it should be based on what they've done. And if all she's done is an adult film about adult characters talking about their problems, I think that working with child actors is a completely different, I mean, even if they're not children, but working with younger actors it's a completely different mindset, and especially newer actors, people who haven't done a lot of acting behind the screen, or especially behind the big screen, you know, or on the big screen. You know, it's a different world. And so I think that personally, like I said, like McGee, he's done TV as well as movies, and he has done child-driven movies with younger actors even than these, and so he would know how to handle that type of person and how to direct those type of actors.
So that's a great point you made. But another reason why I chose Clea Duvall, although she may have only directed one movie, she was one of the directors for Looking for Alaska. That is about high schoolers at a boarding school. So she has worked with younger actors. She has the direction, and she's got the knowledge of how to work with those younger actors. Not only that, you know, they're mostly in their 20s, so it's not child actors, you know, they're young adults. In addition, with your choice, it's mostly action comedies. Action and small budget dramas or drama comedies are very different. And so with Clea and just honestly the look of Intervention and the situations and the fact that it's very small budget, because it's all of them grouping together essentially in one room having an intervention. I think that she can direct that very mirrored, and I think she would do really well with this. And she was given the go-ahead because they feel confident in her doing a bigger budget film, and John Hughes was the same way. I'm not saying that, yes, directing one and only film shouldn't, I'm not saying that that should be the selling point, and it's not. It's just helping me make my own personal point of he was given a chance to do, here's one thing, let's see how you do. And then he was given the full confidence to do his first baby project, and now she is getting to do that too.
All right, so Nicole or Chelsea, do you have anything else to add to your debate?
I didn't hear the end of it, but I think I said my piece.
Okay, so yeah, this is a good round with these directors. So between McGee and let's see, I lost it. Yeah, Clay Duvall. You know, I think it's like what I said before. If this movie was released today, it would be more of an indie film, and I don't think the argument that, because remember, this is not a remake. This is, if Breakfast Club was released today and no one knew about the story, no one, is not adapted from anything, it's completely original in this alternate timeline. So it's not a recognizable name yet. With McGee, I just think he does. I don't think he has that much experience with doing intimate, personal films like what Breakfast Club is. That it's a half an hour film. It's that's set in just a couple locations. Most of it's in the school library, and there's scenes in the hallways and stuff. But it's not a film with that much locations. I mean, McGee's used to doing a bunch of these high budget films with grand locations and with big name stars, and he's not used to doing films that are more intimate and more closed off and are more what's the word I'm looking for, more a little bit claustrophobic. So I think I'm gonna go with Nicole's choice for Claire Duvall, because even though, again, in this situation, Breakfast Club is not a big name yet, so it's not like a studio, whoever's producing it, has to look for a big name director to helm this movie. They just have to look for someone who could tell a good story. And with Nicole brought up, with Claire, who's done the Intervention, it's a movie that has similar themes to The Breakfast Club. And even though would be this director's first time working with young actors, these actors, most of them will be casted are not exactly kids anymore. Let's remember that. A lot of them are already over 18, so they're well adults. They're well mature into taking the directions from a director. So my choice is going to be with Clea Duvall. George, what's your decision?
Yeah, I mean, two very different directors, obviously. Yeah, I mostly know McGee because of like action stuff, like Charlie's Angels, and you mentioned This Means War. Yeah, I haven't seen Rim of the World. It's possible that maybe he could direct, teens, or has directed teens well, but I think that obviously he's the more experienced director, but I really like Clea Duvall because she herself was like a teen actor. She was in like The Faculty and a lot of cool stuff, like the 90s and stuff. And I haven't seen The Intervention, but it sounds like, it's like an ensemble movie about people kind of, Breakfast Club is basically like group therapy. It's almost like an intervention itself. And I think it would also be cool to get like a female perspective because, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like John Hughes is great, and I think he's written some really good female characters, but sometimes, the whole thing with like Bender and Claire getting together and Allison and Andrew getting together, I think that's kind of like a dude writing the story, and like, I don't know, just kind of looking at it from a male perspective. So I just think Clea Duvall is a really cool choice, and also kind of like Nicole mentioned, that she's kind of a new director like John Hughes was. I know it's not like the deciding factor, but I just think that's kind of a cool parallel with John Hughes. So I'm going to go with Clea Duvall.
Jessica, let's hear your thoughts.
With these ones, they are very interesting choices because they are, I feel like, directors from two different sides of the spectrum. The deciding factor kind of for me, while McG might be a very talented director and he has worked with kids, I think most, if not all of our actors are not children. I think that they're all over 18, maybe one or two aren't. But also there is a big difference between an emotionally driven drama and a big action movie. And he, like, looking at his filmography, has a great background in action films that have big budgets and huge set pieces, and that's kind of the main focus of the movie, with a story in between those big action pieces. So I can't see him doing a project like this. It just doesn't make much sense to me. So for me, I'm going to go with Clea Duvall as well.
All right. With that, I think our choice is obvious. But Rudy, let's hear your thoughts before we end this round.
So I think I would have gone with McG. I never would have thought of this Rim of the World movie the way that Chelsea was describing it, with and I never would have interpreted Breakfast Club the way she described it. It's how she was saying, it's not about saving the world, because Breakfast Club is a much smaller scale movie. But I remember the talk between Vernon and the janitor, and about what did the students think of him, and does he really care or not? And he's like, these are the people that are going to be looking out after us when we're old and decrepit, so I think that McG does get really that attention. People respond to him and say oh, you direct action movies and this isn't your style. But I think it's really interesting to put people in positions that they're not comfortable with, or that you wouldn't expect them to see in, because you don't want anybody to get stuck in a rut in the creative business. But Clea Duvall is a very intriguing choice. Like how you were saying, she has that experience as a teen actor and in the faculty, and did people banding together and learning about each other and rebelling against the man. I think I'd end up going with McG.
All right. Well, we got 3 votes for Clea Duvall, so our director for Breakfast Club 2020 will be Clea Duvall. Now, let's recap of what we have so far for the cast of Breakfast Club 2020. As Carl, we got Chris Messina. As Assistant Vice Principal Vernon, we have Hugh Laurie. We have a tie between, for Brian Johnson, between David Masseuse and Charlie Plummer. We'll figure that out within the week by putting up a poll for that. For Allison Reynolds, we also have a tie between Kieran Shipka and Amanda Stenberg. Again, we'll be pulling up a poll on Facebook for you to vote on who you prefer to play Allison. We have our Andrew Clark. We got Nick Robinson as Andrew. And we have Eamon Yogia as John Bender. We have Christine Froseth as Claire Standish. And as for our director, we have Clea Duvall. All right. This is a pretty impressive list that we've assembled today. This looks like one of those intriguing indies that I would go out and see just by seeing the trailer, and just by seeing the talent involved in this. So let's start with Chelsea. What do you think about the cast that we've assembled, despite some of the ties that we have to break?
I like it. I like the cast. I actually like Kristen for the role. I love Elle Fanning, but I think that Kristen is a good choice because they both have that. They're both almost the same age. They're like a year apart, and they both have that pretty innocent look about them. And then as far as the director, I think that Clea would do well. Like I said, there is a difference, I think, working with younger actors, but and like what Rudy said, you can't typecast even a director, just because McGee has done action films doesn't mean he can't do a quiet film. But at the same time, I think that Cleo would probably do a good job with the movie. And all the other ones, I really like all the choices. I wish that more people had seen Todd's stuff because I really think that Todd would be a excellent fit for that, for the principal. But otherwise, I think this is a great cast. I would see this movie.
Okay. George, what do you think about the casting we've done?
Oh no, I think it turned out really great. I think no matter what, we all had really great choices. I tried to picture each side as that role, and for the most part, I could see it for sure. Definitely for the John and Andrew characters, that was really hard for me to debate because I think that they both would do super well. Sorry, I'm trying to watch what I say. No, but of course I would see this. It's really hard to think about it any other way than the way it is. I don't want to see it any other way, but if I'd never seen it and never heard of it, then sure. But all I can think of is the original, and so it's just kind of hard to erase. But yeah, it's super fun no matter what.
Okay, George, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a really cool lineup, and as you've kind of seen throughout, I don't know a lot of these actors, so it definitely has introduced me to some new young actors. It makes me realize how little I watch of like new things. But yeah, I think it's a cool lineup, and I definitely think it's cool that it kind of has that indie feel, because like Curtis has mentioned, like Breakfast Club, if it was made today, a remake or an original movie, like it's basically like a play, or it's like an independent movie. So I like that it has that indie feel, and yeah, if we're living in a world where the Breakfast Club never existed, I would see it. But even if it was a remake of the Breakfast Club that we know, I would still want to go see it. I think it's a cool lineup.
How about you, Jessica?
I kind of agree with the points that everybody was making. It definitely feels like this would work better as an indie film in 2020. With the actors that we have attached to it, like there's enough that keeps me like wanting to go to the theater because I recognize some of the names, but then I'll see like new performances. I would definitely see this movie, and I think it would be a fun like indie movie to check out that I think would grow bigger as time went on.
And finally, Rudy.
Well, you gave us a heck of a task, choosing the Breakfast Club. I was talking this over with friends and family a couple nights before, and the idea was, why would you ever remake the Breakfast Club? Because as a judge, going into it, I knew that I wasn't going to be debating, but I was trying to get into my head, like, who would I choose to be a part of it? And like George was saying, I was realizing that I'm not that familiar with this, with that generation of actors and actresses. Like there was only one or two that could come to mind. And I was pleasantly surprised. I was shocked at what the debaters were able to put out there today. And like I said, just like a bunch of hidden gems, and I'm happy with what we have picked. And it was so tough to choose the directors and actors. I really think that Chelsea and Nicole, I couldn't be disappointed with either way a lot of these turned out. I really look forward to seeing what the finished product is in the next few days.
Yeah, so like I said before, we do have some tiebreakers to deal with for Brian Johnston character and the Allison Reynolds character. We're going to be putting up a poll on that on Facebook, so you could go vote for that. But otherwise, it's a pretty impressive cast we assembled here on this 7th episode of Past to the Future. I'd like to thank my debaters, my panel of judges, George, Rudy, Nicole, Chelsea, and Jessica for being part of this episode. Come join us next week for our 8th episode, which is going to be focused on the Tim Burton classic Edward Scissorhands. Like Jaws, I'm going to be putting myself in the debating pool for that. And Jessica will join us again for that one. Logan's coming back. We're going to have a cool panel of judges for that one as well. So yeah, come join us next time for Edward Scissorhands. Until then, we're going to sign off. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.